This month, as I've shared, I have wanted to talk about the wisdom traditions and how we can see in these old religions echoes and reflections of what we practice and hold to be true in unity as well. Last week, we took a look at the mystical part of Christianity, what I think is really the heart of Christianity, not churchianity, but the mystical heart of Christianity, and talked a little bit about how unity, while unity does not align with Christianity the way it is expressed today, unity absolutely aligns with the mystical heart of Christianity. And if you were inspired by any of what I had shared last week, I want to invite you to consider getting and listening to or reading a book that's just recently come out by John Fugelsang. And the book is Separation of Church and Hate. Separation of Church and Hate. And his history, I don't have the time to go into it here, but his history makes what he has to say even that much more compelling. And what he's really writing about is what I talked about last week, how so much of Christianity and the actual message of Christianity has been hijacked and the narrative has changed. But anyway, we've been wanting to look at where are our roots and what are our teachings and where are the echoes that we find them. And certainly we find them in the mystical heart of Christianity. We also find them in the Eastern paths of awakening, and I'll be talking about three very broad core themes in the mystical or the Eastern paths of awakening. We'll be just touching upon some of the core concepts in Buddhism, in Taoism, and in Hinduism. And we're not here to turn this into a religious class. You can spend a lifetime studying each of those faiths and traditions, and I am not an expert in any one of them. And yet, to the extent that I have learned about them, I can appreciate and see the beautiful, rich tapestry of universal truth that they all share. When I teach our membership classes, one of the illustrations I will often use is that of a bicycle wheel. And that the very hub of the bicycle wheel is like the one with a capital O, God, divine, whatever you want to call it, Brahman, whatever you want to call that one presence and that one power. And then each of the spokes is like various religions and denominations of religions. And the closer you get to it, with a capital I, the closer you get to God, the closer you get to the center, the closer you get to each of those spokes on the wheel. And yet the further away you are from God, the further away you are from the one, the further away you are from truth with a capital T, the further away you are from each other. Can you get that visual? In unity, we attempt very much to be as close to that center as we possibly can. Universal truth speaks in many languages. It's why we say one God, many paths. One God, many paths. Universal truth speaks in many languages, but always points back to the same reality. Always points back to the same reality, the oneness of God and the divine potential within everyone. Words may be different word may be used for God, different word may be used for divine, but always pointing back to that potential, always pointing back to that one. Does that make sense? Okay, so the three very broad core themes to awakening that I think we can see in Eastern religions and traditions, and we can also feel in our own understanding and expression of unity. The first is this: realizing oneness. Realizing oneness, the divine within and without, transcendent and immanent. We say in unity that there is one presence and one power in the universe. God the good, omnipotent, equally everywhere present. Spirit is in this place, yes, And spirit is in every place. There's no place where we can go where spirit is not. This concept of this oneness out of which everything arises, the divine within and the divine without, is shared in Buddhism, it's shared in Taoism, it's shared in Hinduism. One presence, one power, called by many different names, found through many different paths. Think of a mountain peak. Think of how many different ways you can climb from the base to the very top. And yet, eventually, all of those paths will lead where? To the very, very top, and doesn't matter how we get there. I would say, hell no, it doesn't matter how we get there. Just that we're earnest. That's what happens where I wear jeans, I guess. Just that we are earnest in our journey to getting there, and that we make it okay for everybody else to make their unique journey that way. We do not know why one another may pick a very different route, nor do we know why some might go lickety-split and others might take lots and lots of detours. But in the end, it doesn't matter. In the end, it doesn't matter. So realizing that oneness, connecting with that oneness. In Hinduism, there are the concepts of Brahman and Atman. Brahman is absolute reality, unchangeable, out of which everything comes. And Atman is the individualized expression, or the soul in each of us that is a reflection of that one. Think about what's said in the Torah, in the book of Genesis. We are made in the image and after the likeness of what? Of God. We can say in the image and after the likeness of Brahman. Same thing. We're just using very different words and very different ways of trying to explain it and to experience it. Atman is Brahman, one and the same. It's a direct connection, a direct, undeniable parallel to our teaching in unity, that we are in and of the same oneness. Each and every one of us, whether we know it or not, whether we believe it to be true of the other one on the other side or not, it is truth with a capital T. We say in unity that we are not a drop in the ocean, we are the entire ocean in a drop. We are not a drop in the ocean. We are the entire ocean in a drop. All that Brahman is, all that the divine is, all that God is, resides in each and every one of us as divine infinite potential. Do we always live from that? No. Do we have some work to do to get rid of the gunk? I love that word, it's so simple. To get rid of the gunk that keeps us from letting that shine more brilliantly? Sure. Sometimes it takes a lot of therapy to get there. Sometimes it takes a lot of being knocked up the side of the head by the cosmic 2x4 to have an aha moment where we go, oh, that's what it means. Do any of you relate to any of what I'm saying? Right. So our practice in unity, when we use words that come out of the traditional Christian tradition, we will say things like, we are affirming the Christ within. We're not talking about Jesus the man, we're talking about the perfect idea of man, woman in the mind of God that resides in us. We're talking about what the Hinduists would say is Brahman, that we are doing what we can to shatter the illusion of separateness, that there is that and us. There is just that in us. Does that make sense? When we get that, it shifts the way we look at everything. It shifts the way we experience reality. It shifts the way we experience difficulty. It shifts the way we experience joy. There's a somewhat similar related concept to this idea of the oneness, the divinity. And it is the idea in Buddhism called shunyata, which refers to interdependence or emptiness. interdependence or emptiness. In our culture, we sometimes have difficulty with some of these concepts, like the concept of emptiness. We go right to thinking it means nothingness. That's not what it means. What emptiness refers to is interdependence, or the fact that nothing exists entirely on its own. Take that for a moment. Nothing exists entirely on its own. Everything that exists is in relationship to everything else. Does that make sense? Nothing exists entirely on its own. When we understand that concept of emptiness, that concept of interdependence, it informs the way we look at one another. It causes us to realize that our well-being is intrinsically linked with the other's well-being. My well-being is linked to Michelle's well-being. Hers is linked to mine. It doesn't matter if I like her or she likes me. I think we do. But it doesn't matter. Our well-being is linked. And when we understand that, it becomes really imperative that we act from that. I remember the Dalai Lama both saying and writing about enlightened selfishness. It is tied to this idea of our interdependence, that my well-being is intrinsically connected with yours. When I get that, I want to care about you as almost an act of selfishness, enlightened selfishness. That kind of selfishness I can understand. Can you have an amen to that? To his words? Yeah? No? Okay, I'm going to amen him. When I really get it, that we are interdependent, I'm going to think much more long-term and critically about everything, about how I vote, about how I act, about where and how I invest my time and my energy and my money, where I'm going to call upon the courage that I have to stand up for those that maybe cannot stand up for themselves. I remember in the very first synthesis dialogues that the Association for Global New Thought formed in 1999 with His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Dharamsala, India. Ela Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi's granddaughter, was one of the guests that we had invited to this symposium. And I remember, very soft-spoken woman, but her compassion, her wisdom was palpable. I remember her talking about her seeing her role as giving voice to those who couldn't voice what they needed. Giving voice to those who couldn't speak for themselves. And what a sacred act she took that to be. What a sacred act she took that to be. Recognizing the interdependence that we share with one another. In the Upanishads, it is said, that which is the subtle essence, this whole world has that as its self, self with a capital S. That which is the subtle essence, the ground from which all that is comes. That which is the subtle essence, this whole world has that as itself. That is the truth. That is the self. That art thou. How in the world did religious fundamentalism get it so wrong? How in the world did they get, and how in the world is anyone still believing this ridiculous concept of original sin? That somehow we are bad and inherently flawed. Do you get that? I don't get that. And these teachings of the East, the teaching of unity, the teaching in the Old Testament, we are made in the image and after the likeness of God, means we are born in original blessing. in original blessing. And when we get that, everything begins to shift. It's a huge part of awakening. Second core concept in this idea of awakening that we get from the East is mastering effortless effort. And I will be the first to tell you, I have not mastered it at all. But I know how important it is, and I do have moments when I do it better than others, and I'll take that as a win. Because there was a time that I didn't even know that there was this way of being in the world called effortless effort. I thought everything was about you had to make it on your own. Independence, not interdependence. So mastering effortless effort. It's the power of flow. And I don't think there's any teaching better than Taoism and the Tao Te Ching that speaks of this. The very word Tao means the way. And to the extent that we align with the way, the flow, to that extent we experience harmony and peace. And to the extent that we resist that flow, to that extent life becomes unnecessarily complicated and difficult. Effortless effort. It's expressed in the term wu-wei. Say that with me. Wu-wei. Effortless effort. It's often translated as non-action, or what's more accurate is effortless action. It's not about being passive. That was a big thing for me to have to get over, because I really thought this idea of effortless effort was, oh, you just didn't do anything. That is not what it means. In fact, in some ways, it's a little more complicated, because it's about letting go of the egoic effort to force or make something happen and getting quiet enough and stillness enough to sense into the Tao, to sense into the ineffable flow and to align with it. In Unity, we use the word surrender to speak of this concept. And that's a big hang-up word for a lot of people. We use the word surrender. What do we think of? We probably think of like surrendering in a military situation. The loser, the one who surrenders, has done what? Has lost, right? Has given up. That is not what it means in spiritual practice. In spiritual practice, what surrender is about, it's yielding to the flow. Think about when you're driving. Think about what's supposed to happen. It doesn't always happen, I know. But what's supposed to happen when you come to a place where there is a yield sign. You're supposed to be able to gently flow into the traffic that's already flowing, right? It's that kind of feeling, which is very different than the kind of feeling that maybe many of us were raised to think is the way to be, that we've got to really struggle to make things happen through sheer effort or will. That can be exhausting. That can be exhausting. And yet in spiritual practice, there's a way for things to still get done that is not that exhausting. And it is this concept of effortless effort. We aren't struggling to make things happen through sheer egoic effort. We're allowing the divine law to work through our inspired thoughts and actions. Let me say that again. We aren't struggling to make things happen through sheer egoic effort. We're allowing the divine law to work through our own inspired thoughts and actions. Pause point here, a way to maybe put this into a little bit of practice. The next time that you face a challenge, pause for a moment. And instead of forcing a solution, instead of trying to push your way through it, you all know what it feels like when you're pushing, right? Right, so everybody is aware of what I'm talking about. You know when you are really efforting and really pushing, trying to make something happen. The next time you find yourself like that, pause for just a moment and just ask, what is the most easeful, natural step I could take right now? Just ask the question. Pause and just ask the question and be willing to listen for a moment. You might be completely surprised at the answer you get. But at least what you will have done is broken the cycle, even if only momentarily, from this absolute pushing and struggling. Does that make sense? Does that seem doable to at least try? Okay. And then the last very broad core concept is a concept of living consciously, which is very much a part of Hinduism and Buddhism and Taoism, and very much a part of unity. Charles Filmer, our co-founder, broadly studied Eastern religions and traditions. So living consciously, and at the heart, in a way, of living consciously is understanding the law of cause and effect. Think about that for a moment. Living consciously, a significant piece of that is understanding the law of cause and effect. It's a very powerful framework for our spiritual practice. In Hinduism and Buddhism, it is not called the law of cause and effect. It's called what? Karma. It's called karma. And that is simply the idea that every thought, every word, every deed is a seed that is planted, and it's going to create a corresponding result. Every thought, every word, every action is a seed that we plant. I think the biggest challenge that most of us have is we're planting a heck of a lot of seeds that we're not even aware of. That we're not even aware of. And the universe doesn't say, oh, well, she didn't know that she was planting this really not very good seed thought over here, so we're not going to let it grow. The universe doesn't do that. It's like when we plant the seed, something is going to come from that seed. Something's going to come from that seed. This is why living consciously, paying attention to what's going on in here as best we can, is such an important practice. Because we can catch ourselves in the very act and say, no, I'm not going to be holding that thought. I'm not going to take that action. I'm going to choose something different. I'm going to choose something better. Every thought, every word, every deed is a seed planted, whether we are deliberately, consciously holding that thought or taking that deed or planting that seed. It's still going into the fertile soil of the universe, if you will, and it's going to have some sort of effect. In Buddhism is a concept of dharma, which is what guides our action, and that is our righteous conduct, our moral compass, if you will. I think we need a big moral compass today, individually and collectively. I think that we have really, really, really lost our way. And certainly when I hear what those who call themselves Christian are doing and thinking and saying and supporting, it breaks my heart. It makes me really, really think we've lost our way. And Jan Phillips, when I think of you, I think of a prophetic voice, and I think of how many times I've heard you say, we need prophets today. We need people speaking the truth. We need to be offering the counterpoint, the truth of what Christianity really is all about. Does that make sense? And not just be quiet. You don't have to be a Bible expert to basically know that the stuff that's going on is not at all what the spiritual teacher Jesus was teaching. I mean, heck, when he boiled down the commandments, he said there are really only two. And they both have to do with love. Right? Living consciously means doing it not just on our meditation seats, not just in a safe place like this where we have kind of the same sort of language and very similar beliefs. It means living that truth out wherever we go, wherever we work, wherever we play, wherever we socialize. It's a call to conscious living. It's a call to conscious living. We're not victims of divine law. We're conscious participants in it. In Unity, our fifth principle is to say that it's not enough to know these things, we have to do them. We have to live them. Let there be enough evidence of us being a good, awakened Unity person that we could be convicted. Let there be enough evidence of the way we live our lives that that would be so. So in closing, I want to share a spiritual practice, 2 very small, quick, easy spiritual practices for the week, okay? And they both come out of the core themes that I've shared with you this morning of paths to awakening. The first is to really practice a mindful moment by choosing one routine activity. So think right now, what's a simple routine activity you do every day? It could be washing your hair, it could be washing your hands, it could be brushing your teeth, I don't care what it is. One routine activity, and then commit to doing that for 5 minutes, with that being the only thing you're paying attention to. It's not as easy as it sounds. My husband read me a little piece from a Thich Nhat Hanh book that he's reading as I was getting ready to go out for a walk on, I think it was Saturday morning. And my plate has been really overflowing and full for a very, very, very long time. We used to have a staff of 9, 10, 12 people. We have a staff now of 3. So, and the work is still getting done. And that's in part because of the financial situation of it costs money to have a staff. And so I'm forever doing a lot of stuff. And John read me this passage, and it was basically this idea of mindfulness, but if you know Thich Nhat Hanh, you know he often talked about mindful walking. And so John knows that when I walk, I am either doing a meeting with somebody at 6:30 in the morning, because that's typically my walk time, or I am listening to a book, or I have my phone in my hand and I'm moving the things that didn't get done yesterday to today, right? So am I mindfully walking? Not at all. And his challenge to me was, can you walk, honey, even if it's only 1 block out of the 2 miles, and do nothing but pay attention to walking? I said, okay. 1 block, I can do that. It was so hard because I was still up here thinking. Does this make sense? Yes? The subtleness of training oneself to have this single-pointed attention is really a practice, but I know the benefits of it are significant. So whatever you pick for your mindfulness practice, whatever routine task, bring your full attention to that. If you're washing dishes, have it be nothing but the act of washing dishes, okay? Is the assignment simple enough? I'm not saying simple to do, but is the assignment clear enough? Okay. And then the other is to observe Wu Wei. Remember what I said Wu Wei was? Flow. Flow. Effortless effort, right? So just reflect each day if there was an activity that you experienced in the day where it felt like that. And if there was, it's okay if there wasn't. We're practicing, right? And we're going to get better as we practice. Just if there was a moment that you noticed, excuse me, maybe an activity where it just flowed, reflect on that. And maybe, try to understand, try to dissect it a little bit. Well, why did it seem to flow? What was it that you did differently or thought differently, or how did you behave differently? We are our own best teachers in so many ways, but in order to really be a good student of the teacher that we're capable of being, we have to pay attention. We have to pay attention. So, whether the goal is awakening more, living consciously, being more in the flow, what we know to be true is within the heart of these teachings are things that are absolutely practical for us, achievable for us, and can make a huge difference in us creating lives that are much more joy-filled, harmonious, abundant, and healthy for ourselves and others. Namaste.